Does anybody see that it's recording?
It says so, recording and transcription.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So it looks like Rich is on the phone. We'll give him a second. And my PowerPoint just dropped, didn't it? Well, I'm not any good at this today. Okay, let's go back. Here we go. We're going to touch it. Next. Okay. Rich, you're off the phone. Great.
Yes, got it.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining in to the APRA E training workshop. This is going to be recorded internally. We ask that you not distribute this afterwards. We are hoping that we have about 55 registrants that have asked to log on and join this. We do ask that you guys limit your question and answer until towards the end of our question and answer session so that our panelists have an opportunity to speak candidly and without interruption. And then we have Rich Simmons, who will be leading this. And then I will also be reviewing the question and answer in the chat mode. So we will get to those as well. Rich, take it away.
All right, thank you. One minor housekeeping detail. We wanted to put together sort of an intel briefing for Georgia Tech faculty and researchers. So I know that it was possible to forward this notice, but if you're not an official Georgia Tech employee full-time, we would ask you not to participate today, and I appreciate your understanding, just because we're going to share some sensitive business strategies and best practices. And we will record this, but only use this for internal purposes to help future Georgia Tech teams. All right, sorry about that disclaimer. I'm really excited to get together with some experts here. I think we can go to the next slide. A primary goal is really for you to hear from people that have been successful winning awards from APRA E, which is a little bit of a different animal compared to some of your traditional agency funding opportunities. So the bulk of our time really will be hearing from those folks and hearing from questions and conversation you might have in terms of maximizing your opportunities to win. So we'll get to the panelists in a minute, and we also have an hour or so allocated. We will use as much time as we need, and obviously you may think of things after the fact. So I'm sure that these folks will be willing to chat further offline. So we'll go to the next slide. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of just what we're trying to do today. Just tell you about APRA E, and then listen to the experts and how to win. And that may mean different things for programs that they have versus the open call. Next slide.
Rich, can I pause you for one quick second?
Yeah.
Just a quick request that everyone check that they're muted. And if you are not muted, can you kindly just click your mute button real quick? So we're getting a little bit of feedback from the side. Thank you.
All right. I think many of you know about SEI, but just as a reminder, we are a interdisciplinary research institute, one of about 10 under the EVPR. And a large part of what we do is convene folks and the different people that touch on energy research in the Georgia Tech enterprise. And as part of that, the second bullet is, developing more resources. And that could be, financial funding from sponsored agencies or private industry or foundations. And that's the two bullets here at the beginning are really what we're talking about with this APRA E opportunity. is to convene people to talk to experts that have done this, and also be aware of new funding resources that go toward energy and climate opportunities. And then as a part of that, obviously, we want to have an impact in the research and discovery that we do. And so we also want to envision thinking outside the box, creating new lanes of thinking. And I think that Georgia Tech's done a great job, especially through some of these programs, as far as prominent national thought leadership. Next slide. Okay, next slide. For those that don't know, this agency was maybe about a decade or so in the making. 2010, it stood up. And it was really modeled after DARPA to provide funding for high risk, high reward ideas that can really transform the energy sector and give US entities an opportunity to commercialize some of these high risk ideas that would not otherwise be fundable by private sector partners. We really want to think about sea change type opportunities and accelerating innovations. Next slide. The mission is to think about reducing our dependence on foreign sources, improving our efficiency, reducing emissions by any means possible. And
Rich, are you
really
there?
with a, can you hear me?
Yes, now we
Hear me?
can.
Okay. So anyway, just really thinking about the economic and energy security aspects of new innovations and taking a leadership role as a country, leveraging our labs, leveraging our universities. We'll go to the next slide. This is just sort of apple pie and motherhood. And what I want to show here is really where ARPA E sits on the technology readiness and risk spectrum. So Office of Science focuses on sort of TRL 0 to 3. And then right at the tail end of that is sort of where some of the ARPA E picks up, but it's moving much further toward commercialization and obviously incurring higher risk. Some of you have worked with basic energy sciences. Others have worked with the applied offices where the risk threshold is a little bit lower, and you're working with EERE or fossil energy or nuclear energy or maybe the grid and cyber offices. ARPA E sits in between the Office of Science and the applied offices in the sense that they often incur higher risk, but often do more of a handshake as well to technology to market. And then you can see as programs mature, there are other DOE mechanisms, including loan office and commercialization activities that get you all the way to deployment. Next slide. And then this sort of map shows you different pathways that you could take on a disruptive path. And the idea is really to get to a lower cost than incumbent technologies and make that accelerate the path and success rate of high risk, high return opportunities to ultimately think about lower costs.
Apologize.
Yeah, next slide, that's fine.
Okay.
The main thing I want to highlight here is something that's been ARPA E's mantra for a decade or more, which is if it works, will it matter? And I think each of you can think clearly about what this means. I think a lot of the investigators that have had ARPA E awards will talk about how that is different from the way we think about some of the other traditional investigative research that we do. We're really thinking about scalability. If ARPA E does not select your idea, it's not a judgment on the merit of that idea. It may come down to whether it aligns with their expectation for pace or scale up or other factors. But I really do think that they put a big emphasis on the ability to make a big dent in some of these challenges. Next slide. These slides will be available. I'm not going to go into detail, only to say that the DOE budget is now about $50 billion. And a much larger piece of that is ARPA E now, 700 million. which is sort of refreshing to some of us because we were involved in a scary period about 5 years ago when there was a risk of defunding the whole agency. And so at that point, it was 350, 400 million. Instead of defunding it, they've actually increased it. So I think that's a nice evidence that this program and the projects under it serve a really important purpose. Next slide. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I think there are a lot of neat resources. You'll hear more directly from individuals that may have more tangible advice. But ARPA E is continued to remind the Congress why they're here and why they have impact and why it matters, sort of existentially. And then I pulled two recent documents. One is the annual report. The little slide with the matrix there that you can't read actually provides a lot of good detail on the programs themselves, the number of awards and the number of dollars across the programs. And then the roadmap is kind of interesting too. It kind of gives you a feel for, given that they've been in existence about 12 years, where they're planning to go next. Next slide. Again, some just facts, basic facts. I think this is about justifying their existence, making sure Congress continues to appreciate and invest in advanced high-risk energy projects. A lot of commercialization and IP you can see there, which is treated quite differently than it might be on some of the more basic science and traditional energy research. Next slide. This portfolio profile is a little dated, but it's still rather effective at showing that they canvass both stationary and mobile opportunities around energy, as well as, distributed and also conventional efficiency measures as well. And a lot more focus on carbon dioxide. Next slide. So I'm about done, but I want to say that you have 4 experts you're about to hear from, but there are a lot more on the bench at Georgia Tech. And I'm sure that a lot of these folks, this list is not even exhaustive, but would be willing to talk to you about specific ideas. And you can see that it canvasses pretty much that same breadth of the program offerings themselves. Next slide. They do try to divide up the resources nationally, as well as by organizational type, but it's nice to be reminded universities are the largest single category of lead organization. Next slide. Now to the really important business. When we chose the date for this workshop, we actually thought the Open Award would be very close to being released, and we just learned that it will actually be released in February. So we're about 3 months early, we think, before the release of the open call. But in the meantime, we understand ARPA E will be releasing something fairly soon around smaller awards, which they're calling the Sparks program. More will be available. You can see that at the top, the paragraph is from our consultants in DC providing some intel. It looks like $500,000 awards will be these seed projects for a 1-month period to really deal with something early stage, to prove concepts, meant to be very kind of discreet, but also maybe leverage something further. So one thing they explained was these seed awards might lead up to a larger open award that if it's opened in February might be negotiated in the summer. And so within a year, you'd be able to convert some of the Spark effort to a larger 3-year program. Okay, I think one more slide, and then just some resources. If you go to the Open website, they do have every single Open, and it's a program that usually comes every 3 years. You can check what they've funded in the past, talk to people, and then you can also see the program awardees under a pretty good search engine on the ARPA E site itself. And I think that's it for my intro. So I'm going to let each of the individual panelists just go ahead and walk through self-introduce, talk a little bit about the award that you have, provide some guidance for our audience, and then we can come back and retouch on anything you'd like to repeat. So today we have, and I think there's a slide of the individual presenters before we get to go forward a couple. Also, Trish, it seems to have
Yep.
reverted back to the 2-screen mode.
Thank you. Apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So first up, we have Professor Yi, who had a great experience when the agency was founded. So go ahead, Shannon.
Great, thank you, Rich. It's a wonderful introduction. It's great to be here. Yeah, so as Rich alluded to, I had the pleasure of being APRA E's first fellow. So I got to grow the fellows program back in 2010. I got to help set up a number of the initial programs, Beat It, Beast, Grids, then helped launch the Sunshot Initiative. I haven't been an awardee at Georgia Tech, but prior to my time at Georgia Tech, I was an awardee at UC Berkeley. More recently, as Saad and Lisa know, I've been asked to see about trying to get more program directors back in to APRA E. So if you're at that phase of your career where you're thinking about being a program director in DC, please reach out to me. This past summer, I had the pleasure of giving the keynote address at the APRA E retreat offsite, which was a closed-door brainstorming session for APRA E. So I can talk about that a little bit as we go through some of these questions. My big takeaway that I want to share with people is that APRA E now, in this current year, is very different than it has been in the past. The big takeaway is that APRA E has a very few number of program directors, and a lot of the program directors that are there are, they've been there a while, so they're going to be transitioning out. So this means it's going to be a very different strategy when it comes to open. You have very seasoned program directors who will be reviewing your concept papers. So some people may say that those program directors are jaded, or some people may say they can't have the wool pulled over their eyes or something along those lines. So it's going to be very different. But expect that because there's short staffing, that people are not going to have as much time or attention to devote towards each individual concept paper. The timeline is exactly right. I think this should be launched in February.
Uh-oh.
Oh, did we lose everybody?
I can hear you.
Oh,
Rich
I heard
said
Rich
that-
talking.
Yeah, we were just
I'm
gonna
gonna keep going because I'm not
go
sure
to
if Rich is-
presenter. Yeah, we're just gonna let you go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, cool, Rich. Sorry. Yeah. So RPE is a little short-staffed. So with this being launched in February, now is the exact time to reach out to program directors and start having conversations about how good of a fit is your idea. I actually took a call with 2 program directors this morning talking about one of the ideas I want to put forth. So that's the high level that I have, and I'll hand it off to the next person.
Great. We can now, Kim Curtis, are you on the call?
Yeah,
Perfect.
be happy to go next. So
Thank
I
you.
think that follows nicely chronologically, because I guess what I can say is my research is in cements, which you may not think falls into this RPE category, but cement is one of the most energy intensive materials to produce. So RPE had a cement call a few years back. It started with these workshops that they organize. So when they're not doing the open call, they will have workshops in specific areas. If you get invited to one of those, you should absolutely go. If you hear of one forming, try and get yourself invited. I ended up becoming a co-PI on 3 RPE grants all at once, which was a lot. And the reason I mentioned it follows nicely chronologically is when I attended the workshop and I came back and I realized that teams were forming. I reached out to Shannon immediately. We've got such a great ecosystem here at Georgia Tech, and I asked Shannon, how am I going to do this? What do these proposals look like? And Shannon was really generous and shared his prior successful RPE proposal with me, and I teamed with, as I mentioned, 3 other groups. I didn't end up leading any of these, which I'll tell you why I think that's a good thing. And then we ended up getting all 3, which was great. So how do we do that? I would say, attend the workshop, get to know the program directors. They do hold office hours there. They've got really strong opinions. You may think that you know everything about your topic, and you probably do know more than the program director does, but you've got to listen to them because they're going to ultimately make these decisions. That's what I learned is, take their advice. They've got reasons for suggesting the things that they do. It could be anything from ideas to teaming. They'll even suggest that you bring new people into your team. I can speak more about what it was like to work with APRA E, but I can say it was a great experience. It's very different from like an NSF or a basic science grant. It's very applied, very innovative, very focused on generating IP, new technology, commercialization. But I became great friends with my program director. He actually emailed me something funny this morning. So there's great relationships that are built, in the name of science and engineering. Also, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work though too.
Thank you. Do we want to go now to Professor Graber?
Great.
Sure, yes. Do you happen to have my illustrations ready?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
So
great.
you have to bear with me. Somehow my computer is duplicating everything.
Oh, that's
So
all good. That's all
I'm going to
good.
share my screen, and
I'll keep
then
it
we're going to
short.
pop up. Perfect. Okay. How are we now? I've got to duplicate my settings for some reason. Can you see the screen?
Not
No,
yet.
Not yet,
No.
Trish.
Okay. I apologize. Give me one moment. We've been
Well,
burning
in the
this
meantime, I can
colander
say
today. Yes,
I
please do.
definitely don't consider myself an expert. I have had the honor to lead 2 grants, 2 APRA E grants, and also to co-PI on a couple more. And this has worked very, very well for me so far. All right, I think it's
Is it loading?
now we can see your desktop.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, and then let's guess where we need to be. I apologize again. All right. I'm going to
There we
dive right
go.
in. Next.
Yeah, no, this is good. You can keep this. So
Okay.
APRA E, why will you be interested in APRA E? And I chose this figure because there are so many amazing research projects you can do on an absolute shoestring budget. But once in a while, you have an idea where you really realize actually do need the money. There may be large infrastructure parts to it, lots of engineering, building, designing, or you may simply need a big team. You cannot do it with a smaller team. And then APRA E is your friend for those sort of ideas. Next slide. Because they really come with the funding that is needed to do these amazing things. And for me, it has completely changed the trajectory. I've chosen some of my ideas that I've had for years, but I always thought it's completely unrealistic to do this at the university level. And then so there is APRA E, and they support you doing so, and it completely changes the trajectory. Then next one. So what has worked really well for me is to ignore instructions. Now that's maybe not necessarily for the open program, but especially for the more the solicitation where they actually give you topic areas. Then often they come with a fairly long description of what they're looking for. And I find it interesting as a starting point. But every single time I actually do something that they're not proposing. I go through the instructions and say, okay, they propose topic area A, topic area B, and topic area C. And I know they will get a lot of proposals in those 3 areas, but I'm going to do topic area D that nobody at APRA E has thought about. Next slide. Then what will happen at some point is you will hear from them. And this can be quite an experience because they only communicate with the PI. and they want really fast responses. They may give you notice that they received reviewer comments and they want to know your response to them. They give you maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 if you're lucky. And don't panic about those. That's the way they operate. But it really has the advantage that things can go very fast. Next one. So while it can be a bit rocky to go through these, especially when it comes through negotiating the statement of project objectives, or then even actually running the project and just trying to meet all these milestones that you've set, I really recommend to enjoy that ride. It's at times it can be a bit stressful, but that's what you have your team for, and they're all there to make it work and make it happen. And if you feel like you're completely lost, my recommendation is always the same. Call your program director, tell them about the issues you're having, why you won't be able to reach a particular milestone, and find a solution for this. Next one. And then there comes also the time that you may actually not be able to meet certain milestones. And what I'm always trying to do is to have some additional security. I always try to have some bonus results in certain areas, that when in certain tasks, maybe you've not really met the milestones that you've set, that at least you have some other results. Always have something ready if you happen to meet your program director at a conference or so, have some interesting story about an experiment that went terribly wrong or terribly right or whatever happened. And then my last slide is for me, the absolute key for success, both writing the proposal, but also executing on them is having the right team. And for me, this has always been a huge team effort. And I could often know well in advance, before even submitting the proposal, whether it will be a successful proposal or not, just by the team spirit. If it's always worked out, and we had these meetings, and if we worked hand in hand, and it just comes together naturally, then I know this will be eventually will be a winning proposal and a successful project. So that's my take on APRA E.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. All right, we'll go to Pamela to close it out now.
Hi, I'm Pamela Plantayaya, and chemistry, biochemistry, and chemical and biomolecular engineering. I'm going to try to add to what the other panelists said. I was part of an APRA E as a postdoc, and then I currently have an APRA E where I'm a co-PI here at Georgia Tech. And I think that how it's different from other agencies is because they're really focused on the tech to market and trying to make a startup and moving the technology from basic science to, further up the technology development ladder. So if you have a project that is ready to do that jump, they have the expertise and the resources to help you out, finding the right connections if you need to. I wanted to highlight that milestones, the previous person mentioned milestones, unlike basic science proposals, this one will have quarterly milestones. You're going to be talking to your program manager very often. Have results ready. Always be on your game, right? I haven't been successful at an open. Unlike the previous panelist, I look at the topics and I work in the area of bioindustrial technologies. So I see if it fits within my area of expertise. Team is really important in that agency because the projects tend not to solve just one technical problem, but a process, or at least the ones that I've been involved in. So you need multiple people to tackle the multiple challenges and bringing something to market. And Richard showed at the beginning that APRA E sort of sits between Office of Science and EERE. So it's a handoff. And so when they're looking at your projects, I think they're also thinking about how is this moving forward. Yeah. I think that's it. A lot was covered by the previous
Yeah.
panelists.
That's excellent. Thank you, all four of you. We're going to go to questions in a minute. I have 2 or 3 small ones that I'd like anyone to comment among the panelists. What is the view toward publications from this agency as opposed to other funding agencies?
I would say, go for it, Kim. Yep.
Oh, good. They absolutely want you to publish, yeah, and make presentations. They also want you to file for patents and protect your IP. It's one of the things that comes up regularly at the quarterly meetings is, oh, that sounds like something new. Have you done an invention disclosure yet?
The only thing I would add to it is the end result is not just stopping at the publications, right? They do carve out a portion of your award for tech to market initiatives. So, you know, there really is the desire to take it beyond just publishing results, maybe spinning out a company, getting a technology, making impact. So going beyond the publications is really important.
Very good. Thank you both. Could one of you comment about, or one or more comment about, you know, the role and the stage in your career and when it might be right to go for ARPA E or when it might be right to wait or partner?
Yeah. So I make this piece of advice, I think every time we have this, I would not encourage new assistant professors to go after ARPA E awards. The pace that you typically have to go at and what you're trying to do may not align well with seeking tenure. So I would encourage people who are past that startup phase to then consider ARPA E awards. But the first couple years when you're trying to establish your lab and your reputation, I do not think that's the best time.
Yeah.
And it's all about the team, right? And so you do need to develop expertise, and it's a lot of calls and follow-ups that you need to do. So I agree with Shannon. I think as an assistant professor, I mean, it would be a little bit more difficult.
Good. And then one more quick one. Each of you mentioned in different ways the tech to market. Can you just discuss how you went about developing a plan that you felt like you could keep pace with, that you could achieve ambitious targets, and that would potentially be sustaining at the end of your project? Whether you already had that capability, or you found it within your team, or you tapped into ARPA E best practices?
Lucas, do you want to take this one?
I know. I feel like I must have PTSD from that part. I know it came up quickly, but it was a lot. They bring in a person in addition to the program director who just does tech to market, and so that person acts as a mentor and helps to guide you. But I know I was trying to think back on our projects, and one of them. There was a company that came out of it, and so some of the technology that was developed became part of the company. The others, though, I feel like it was held in this little bit of lip service.
My recommendation on Georgia Tech side to add this year is to work with the people at Venture Lab. This has worked out extremely well for me. We've started companies and negotiating licensing deals with the people at the patent office and everything. It works really, really well. And keep them. This is basically my recommendation. Include them from the first day on you're developing the proposal. Highly recommended.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on tech to market? Very good. We have a couple of questions in the chat, but I think we should just have the audience members raise hand and unmute and go ahead and ask your question. I think I saw one from Tom Orlando. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for organizing this. I actually have 2 questions. They're not related. So Shannon mentioned this, the dynamics of the office. So do we know who's rolling in and who's rolling out and what program managers are going to be there?
Do we know? So yeah, do we know which program directors will be there? I don't fully know all the program directors that are rolling off. You can look at how long they've been there. Program directors are typically 3 years, but a number of them are getting extensions because it's been difficult to hire up new program directors. So, yeah, they've just been there a while.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no one should expect to have the same program director through the entire phase of their open award.
Well, okay, so that was the other question.
Yeah.
Because of the dynamics, will you expect this? So you just answered that. The other thing is more of a political question. So how tight is the RPE program with the Office of Science? Because typically the Office of Science folks, if you're in a core program, they're unable to expand your money, but they don't like you to diversify also or go to other DOE sources. They tend not to like people to be double funded. It's particularly important if the topic is related. If the topic's not related, of course, it's a little bit, less of a conflict. But so what is your feeling about the coupling to the Office of Science?
I personally feel they're not well coupled.
Okay. So is that good or bad?
It depends on, I guess, your individual idea and what you're trying to do. I think it can go either way. So I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but is the Office of Science involved at all in the decision?
No, in the decision, no. I do know that a number of people from the Office of Science serve as volunteer reviewers. But keep in mind, the program directors do not have to listen to the reviewers. They can completely ignore them and just make their own decisions.
Right. Okay. Right.
Pamela, you have some BES experience. Do you want to comment on that? The link between basic science and ARPA E?
The projects that I had are very different. So I do not know how close are the projects that Tom wants to propose. I just work on very different projects. So I've had BES, ERE, and ARPA E, and it works. They are all very different to work with. You can make a whole other session about ERE. But the key part is risk, right? And where you are with the technology that you're developing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Jumin Zhang, would you like to ask your question?
I think this is a very good panel, and also that we timing, ahead of time. So I wanted to know a little bit more information. Anybody know about Spark? Number one, is this a general name or is this a new name? So they've been saying the Spark somewhere, but is this and then this program seems to be, the intention is to have some original ideas that are 500 CAF for 2 years. That I know. Roughly speaking, anybody know if they have a call for papers in February, will they have a 3 months window for submission or 6, or 4 months? Roughly the due date will be, something like that.
So I can start, and maybe if others have more info. We have fairly limited info. We just found out about the Spark recently. Normally, the lead time question would follow like a 2-month open solicitation period and negotiation maybe or selection for a month or 2. I would think by fall you would be, negotiating your final award. So I think probably if February is the solicitation, probably by fall semester you're underway. And it would be, I think, 1 year, right? 12 months. And then I think that might or might not align with open. I'm sorry. The Spark is expected before the end of the year. So anyway, I think it's 5 months or so end to end probably.
So 5 months for the proposal. So after solicitation post in February, they perhaps do a July deadline for proposal. But perhaps there'll be a short proposal, whatever. But then roughly half a year or so, right? Still.
I think so. Yes. They may be under some kind of federal funding, timeline. That may be why this is coming before the open. But anyway, we don't have a ton of extra info. We can definitely stay apprised and let you know. Do any of the other people have
before
info?
before the proposal, before the call, anytime when can we talk with the program the director, when we cannot? So maybe, you know, I think that's a simple question.
You can
Yeah,
talk
sure.
with the program directors up until the day that the FOA is posted. So now is the time to try to get in conversation with them. Your goal is to try to find alignment with a program director and to get them excited about your concept paper. And then the hope is that they will pick up that concept paper in their assignments, and then they could potentially invite you for a full proposal, right? Some of the worst case scenarios are when you just get assigned to some random person and they're just not interested in your concept, and then you're not invited for a full proposal. So some of this is a little bit of hustling, is the short answer. There's not a tried and true strategy because each person is different for how program directors operate. But it's trying to find that alignment and just get your idea in front of them.
Thanks, Shannon, but the Spark is a little bit different, right? The Spark is a little bit different. It's a smaller award.
Yeah, so I
Spark.
don't know a lot of the details on how Spark is going to be different than some of the other seed proposals they've done in the past. I'm going to just assume it's going to be like the seed proposals. And in that case, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You know, it's only about 20 awards, $10 million a piece out of a $700 million budget. So they always have the ability to go, oh, that's a cute little idea. Let me toss a little money towards it. And so that's just one of those standard seed opportunities.
Just to clarify, 10 million is the total pool and $500,000 is the typical award. Yeah.
Yep. So it's a very, very small amount, and it just is, you know, kind of think of it as discretionary funds for the program directors if there's an idea. And previously, that has been kind of on a rolling basis over a year, but I don't know if Spark is going to have the same kind of thing.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
David Flaherty, you have a question?
I had to connect to my phone since I was driving away from campus.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead and ask. You're on.
Thank you. Yeah, my question was related to, I think, something you just answered. If there's a useful way that tends to work to get the attention of program managers, other than reading the profiles on the APRA website and just emailing them.
Not really. Yeah, I tried responding to you also in the chat. For those of you who may not be aware, some of the program directors publish their email addresses, others do not. But the general rule of thumb for DOE headquarter employees is firstname.lastname@hq.doe.gov. And that works about 90% of the time to get a hold of somebody.
Thank you.
Yeah, and related to that, I know, Shannon, they're often looking for program directors, right? And they've often solicited that inquiry at Georgia Tech. Do you have any thoughts on when that might make sense for someone in our enterprise?
Yeah, it really kind of, I think, depends on an individual and where you are in your individual career path. The selection, especially right now, is very stringent. The APRA director, Evelyn Wang, is insistent that she does not let the quality drop. And so there have been a lot of unsuccessful program directors within the last year. So, you know, I think that's great. Lifting up that quality is really a good thing, but it's not an easy course. And, you know, don't view this as kind of let me just go have a nice, easy job where I'm just organizing some workshops. No, you really have to come with a very solid program. And the interview process is not easy. It takes a lot of time. So I'm happy to talk more if people would like to pursue that. There's things I may be able to help with there. And also, I'll just toss out the invitation. If anyone wants to bounce ideas off me, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to read over concept papers, give some advice. So feel free to reach out. And maybe the other panelists can join me, but I'll leave it to them. I don't know how everyone's bandwidth is. Yeah.
Can I add one point to that too? The other thing that is somewhat serendipitous but is useful that I found is, you know, if you have close colleagues that you know in industry, ARPA E, likes to recruit. There's several people who are industry retirees. In fact, 2 current program officers are people I've worked with in industry the last 20 years that are, one of them's now my program manager. And I've also connected ARPA E to a number of people, who've worked, like at corporate, like GE's Global Research Center or Raytheon's Technology Research Center. And it's a nice way to seed the pool too with people who will know you and appreciate your work.
Yep. And Tim, could you talk about cost share real quick, just so people are aware and maybe some of the tricks of the trade there?
Yeah, so I think there's lots of opportunities for cost share. Obviously the first, I don't know what you guys already said because I just arrived from the airport, but your 9-month salary is a great place to start. Most school chairs will kick in money, and I think I've never seen a case where cost share is required that the institute hasn't met it. You start with yourself and things that you can do in terms of your own academic time, and then you move to your school, and then there's a process which your finance office should know, where you go to the college, which is managed by the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Engineering, for instance, and then the EVPR's office. And they'll usually split it 50-50 between College of Engineering and the EVPR's office.
And maybe one more idea there. If you need certain equipment in your lab that you don't have yet, and you may not be able to bake it into the proposal directly, you could consider it as a potential for cost share.
And then Tim, you had a comment. I don't know if you want to say more about the corporate partner angle.
Yeah, I guess.
Commercialization.
I have two active open FOAs from Open FOA, and neither of them there is no company going to be spun out of Georgia Tech on those. I don't really have an intention to, but both of them were with companies, one led by Penn State, the other's led by General Electric. And in both cases, we have very strong corporate anchor partners who lead the commercialization activity. So if you don't really have interest in the commercialization or whatnot, that's certainly a great option. If you can just look at the active awards and you'll see, for example, GE's Global Research Center is just killing it on these awards. Raytheon, what used to be UTRC, now RTRC, the Raytheon Technology Research Center. Those are 2 research labs in my field. Siemens is another one, but we're their kind of strong partners, and ARPA E really likes those because it provides a very clear commercialization off-ramp.
Great. I'd like to close out with something about the open call. I know many of us have not been successful in prior open calls. I feel like the review criteria are hard in a program. They're even harder when you're self-defining and trying to create metrics that don't yet exist or convince folks about novelty in a space that might not be covered. So are there any thoughts, even if you don't have your open call award, any thoughts about, for folks considering the open call, how they might maximize their chances?
I think to maximize your chances, you want to get in contact with program directors ahead of time, right? It's about finding that alignment with your concept, not necessarily just wowing them with some made up promises for metrics and targets and that kind of thing, right? So.
I'm just going to add that the good thing is that you get to write a concept paper, which is not as much work as writing the full proposal. And so, yeah, it is time that you're going to invest developing that concept paper. But really, if you develop a really solid concept paper, it's easier to write a proposal because it has a lot of parts, the ARPA proposal.
I would also encourage you to be open on teaming. I teamed with a bunch of people that I hadn't worked with before, but also with people I had, and both were successful strategies. One of the teams I was put on because the program director suggested me to them, so I would be open to, when you talk to the program director, to doing that as well.
All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat, but I would like to give each panelist a chance to just offer some final thoughts, and we'll start in the order we went. So Shannon?
Final thoughts. Oh gosh. I'm just going to reiterate some of the things I said at the onset. This coming year's Open is going to be different than previous Opens. Right now, ARPA E is understaffed, and the people that they have been there for a while, so they may be jaded or experienced. So think about that as you're writing your concept papers. I think because the pool of dollars, 200 million is going to be there, they're going to get swamped. So as you write your concept papers, really try to figure out how you're going to hook people on that first page, right? Some text, really key figure. You really have just a very short window to grab somebody's attention, both with the title of your concept paper, that image, and what you say on the first page. So I think this is going to be a little bit different when it comes to how you structure these, just given the constraints that the office is under.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. And we'll go to Kim.
That's great advice, Shannon. I would only add to that, that mantra, if it works, will it matter? Program directors have said that to me countless times. So I would keep that in mind as you develop the concept paper, and they really are looking for bold new ideas, things that break the mold. So incremental work is not going to fly for these.
Good. Thank you. Lucas?
If I can add something, it's probably that it's very important to be prepared. When you're actually successful with the proposal, the real work only starts, right? So you may be prepared lab-wise, personnel-wise, be ready to, I don't know, have already looked through applicants for joining your lab, all of this, because when it comes, it comes. But enjoy the ride. It's great.
3 at once. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, right.
And then it ends just as quickly. It's like going off a cliff.
Right. Very good. Pamela, you get the final word.
I was gonna emphasize the point that Shannon made about the metrics and the numbers. I think this is a very quantitative agency where you may need to set specific milestones. So I think that a robust proposal is made when you can actually justify the numbers that you're going to get or where the technology is, but quantifying as much as you can what you're going to do and where you're going to get, I think allows you to make a better argument.
Excellent. If I could ask Trish to just put the emails up there, that final slide, and folks can take note of the panelists' email addresses, if she wouldn't mind. And we'll be happy to prepare the slides for folks that would like to keep them. Again, please keep them in the Georgia Tech system. And we are recording this. It will be available again for your reference in the future. And I thank everyone for your time on a Friday afternoon, and thank you especially to the panelists. And good luck with the open call and the Spark, and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, guys. Yep.
I'm so sorry about the PowerPoint. It was either duplicating or locking the screen, so perfect. Let's see. We will stop the recording somehow. Type. Meeting and